Hi, BookTube. It's Lindsay and Winnie. You can't see her, but she's sitting right here. You might hear some purring. I don't know. We'll see. I'm here today to talk about the books I'm reading this Friday. I hope everyone else is having a good Friday. I was able to get a lot of the stuff I needed to get done a lot earlier than expected at work, and so I was able to get off a bit early and do all the errands that I needed to do. And I was able to do them earlier instead of like when everyone else is out at like 5 o'clock, which is like the worst time I think to do errands. So yeah, at least for my plans this weekend, since my boyfriend's my boyfriend's birthday was earlier this week. This weekend we're gonna get together with some friends and have a nice lunch together, which will be nice. So yeah, that's the only thing I can think of that I have plans to do. I mean, other than that, I'll probably just stay around here at home and get some books read. So the first book is What Have We Done? The Moral Injury of Our Longest Wars by David Wood. It's a really interesting cover. It's like a guy in the army with like his head in his hands. You can kind of pick that up on the camera. And this is from a journalist, David Wood, and it says, most Americans are now familiar with PTSD and its prevalence among troops. In this groundbreaking new book, David Wood examines the far more pervasive yet less understood experience of those we sent to war, moral injury, the violation of our fundamental values of right and wrong that so often occurs in the impossible moral dilemmas of modern conflict. It features portraits of combat veterans and leading mental health researchers, along with Wood's personal observations of war and the young Americans deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I don't think I've ever read a book solely focused on PTSD. I know recently I read the book, everyone was reading the therapy book. I think it was called We Need to Talk to Someone or something like that. Was the book with the cover of the tissue box. You know what I'm talking about. I think it's Lori Gottlieb was the author. So I was like looking into other books to read, focusing on psychology, and this one came out up on my radar, and so I thought I would give this one a try. Another nonfiction I'm reading is because along the same lines of me reading that therapy book, I had recently read Hiroshima by John Hersey, and then I saw that there's a biography of him that just came out, and it's Mr. Straight Arrow, the career of John Hersey, author of Hiroshima, which I thought was like a perfect pairing. This is by Jeremy Tregelon, and that book, I can't say I love that book. It's a hard, you can't say you love it. It's a so depressing subject, but I thought how the book was done was just impeccable. I mean, it really brought the devastation of the city right to, I mean, you could picture and visualize everything that was happening. You got to know, it followed like 5 or 6 people, and so you saw everything from their eyes, from their perspective, and you felt like you were there, and it was just horrifying. So I'll be interested to read this biography. It says in Straight Arrow, let's see, Tregelon answers that question and shows that Hiroshima was not an aberration, but was emblematic of the author's life work. Because Hiroshima was like one of his widely known books, but he's also written several of them. And so yeah, this one it's going to be interesting. I'm hoping to get to it this weekend. It's like a shorter biography, so I'll be able to read it this weekend with all the other books I'm planning to read. And this next one is a mystery book, or thriller, I would say. It's Open Carry by Mark Cameron, with a nice picture of the wilderness with, it looks like some like deer horns, like thrown in the middle of the field. And this is the first book in the Arliss Cutter series. And I've never read Mark Cameron before, but I thought this first book in the series would be a good place to start. And it says, U.S. Marshal, sorry, my cat's tail is just flipping everywhere. U.S. Marshal Cutter is a born tracker. Raised in the Florida swamplands, he honed his skills in the military, fought in the Middle East, and worked 3 field positions of marshal services. When it comes to tracking someone down or taking someone out, Cutter is the best, but his newest assignment is taking him out of his comfort zone to southeast Alaska. Cold, dark, uninhabited forest often shrouded in fog, and it's the kind of case that makes his blood run cold, the shocking murder of an Indian girl. And so I think this is going to be very like location based. You're going from Florida, like a swampy Florida landscape, to the cold wilderness of Alaska. Will be interesting to see how this one goes. And then the last book is another nonfiction, but it's a graphic novel This is March, book 1, and it's John Lewis, Andrew Aiden, and Nate Powell. And here's that cover. And it's the first book in, I think it's like a trilogy they're doing for March, and it's all about Congressman John Lewis, and he's an American icon. He was really important in the civil rights movement, and his commitment to justice and nonviolence has taken him from an Alabama sharecropper's farm to the halls of Congress, from a segregated schoolroom in the 1963 March on Washington, and from receiving beatings from state troopers to receiving the Medal of Freedom from the first African American president. And the first book, it's I think it's chronologically done, and it's following John Lewis's youth in rural Alabama and his life-changing meeting with Martin Luther King and the birth of the Nashville movement. And so I will definitely be looking out for the other. I think it's 2 more in this series of his life. So yeah, these are the books I'm reading. Other than those books, I will be finishing up tonight a couple books that I have been working on in June. I want to finish, not in June, in May. I want to finish up before June starts. And yeah, other than that, I think tonight I'm going to spend some time working out my June TBR. That's always going to be fun to pick out the books and trying to meet some challenges. So yeah, I hope everyone has a really nice weekend. I'm hoping to have a really good weekend and stay cool away from this heat. The heat's coming right when June starts. So yes, the summer is here. Okay, thanks. See you soon, book 2.